The chair recognizes the honourable member for St. Anne's.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, not only is this a good day to be a member of local government, but this is a good day to be a Bahamian. Because by my count, Madam Speaker, there's only 665 days left until the next general election must be called. And as my colleague behind me says, they're happy about that too. I know they're happy because pressure's tall and they bend in, Madam Speaker. The standards of governance are crippling them, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, we're here to debate a bill today that is a bill brought under the government in the sunshine by the Right Honourable Hubert Alexander Ingram, his worthy cabinet, as well as members of both sides of the House back in 1996. That's 25 years since independence, governed by the PLP before anybody here in the capital took the time to consider the family islands and how they should govern and lead themselves, Madam Speaker. We have a Prime Minister today that rules this country but received less than 900 votes in total. He is a family island constituent representative, Madam Speaker.
Also recognize the constituents.
Our good leader from Marcos City in the last debate gave a contribution and said that if Columbus came back to San Salvador, he would see that nothing has changed. Now, Madam Speaker, we're hearing from the good member for Central and South Eleuthera, the Honourable Clay Sweeting, telling us today that this is good for the country. This is bringing vast improvements in local government, Madam Speaker. But I'm hearing from members of local government in Grand Bahama who, victorious in the last election of January 2022, still haven't gotten their deposit back after that election, Madam Speaker. Others say they got theirs back, but not all of them have gotten their deposits back, Madam Speaker. So that is not good, Madam Speaker. That is not good, Madam Speaker, for the Bahamas. Now, Madam Speaker, the last elections were in January of 2022. We're in the Honourable House of Assembly today to debate this bill. My expectation is that this bill will pass before the end of the month if Senate sits. And we'll have a communication come back from the Senate to say that this bill has passed. Just like this morning we got a communication from the Senate to say that the domestic minimum top-up tax has passed and the urban renewal bill has passed. I don't think that anybody is expecting the case to be other than that. This bill we're debating today is going to be passed in November. At minimum, it's going to be passed by December. But the bill itself, Madam Speaker, speaks to an election date under the Act of the third Wednesday in June of 2027. So if we pass this bill today, Madam Speaker, if the Senate passes this bill after that, and the bill itself repeals and replaces the existing Local Government Act, that means that the next election is not going to be for years. The next election will not be until the third Wednesday of June of 2027. You won't be able to, from my reading of the bill, Madam Speaker, to have an election in December. You won't be able to have an election in January. You won't be able to have an election in June of 2025. That's my reading of the bill. The Act specifically sets down when the election date is to pass.
The chair recognizes the honourable member for Central and South Eleuthera.
Clarification, persons throughout this country has advocated for fixed election dates. This is a first step towards that through this Local Government Act. Why it is in June of 2027 was because of COVID. Local government elections were postponed. So this is to bring it in and coincide with the fiscal budget year of central government. So everything can coincide, because currently now when we have elections in January, that it doesn't coincide with the central government central budget. So this is to regulate all of that, bring it into line, and then after then, you'll see specific dates set for local government election. So you just can't wake up today and say, oh, the Minister for Local Government wants to call a local government election, we could call it January or February or March or whatever. This is a fixed date, so persons who travel, persons, central local government members who got a budget they need to sort out, knows when election will be called.
Thank you, honorable members. Understandably so.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker, and thank you to the Minister for Local Government for confirming that the next elections will not be until the third Wednesday of June of 2027. I heard January, but he's referring to the pattern we're currently on because of Dorian and COVID. The last elections were in January 2022. What will be June? What will be June? You have an act coming in that states that if we pass it today and if we pass it in the Senate in November, the next elections will not be until the third Wednesday of June of 2027.
So this act, as you know, you've been in government, what, 3 years? So you should know that even though the act is passed, it has to be gazetted, right? So when an act is gazetted, that's when that will fall into place. Madam Speaker.
Thank you, honorable member.
All right. So, Madam Speaker, that appears to be completely overlooked by this administration passing this bill before the elections have even been gazetted for notice, and we're going to be passing this. So we're going to end up having elections under an act that has been repealed and replaced.
The chair recognizes the honorable member for Freetown.
Madam Speaker, I would only rise to advise and answer that there's something called the Interpretation General Clauses Act that deals with what happens when you repeal acts and vested rights under the act. So unless this act purports to extend the life of the existing council under the repealed act, under the Interpretation General Clauses Act, they will have to be elected when they're due, and this can only speak prospectively and not retrospectively. And so as the member for Central and South, Eleuthera, is saying, the election that is set for January will take place in January, and then this act will speak prospectively as to what happens after that.
Thank you, honorable member. St. Anne's?
Madam Speaker, the act at Section 97 states that subheading is repealed. The Local Government Act, Chapter 37, is repealed. Section 9D8, subheading Savings and Transitional. Any license, authority, approval, or exemption granted under the repealed act in force immediately before the coming into force of this act, A, shall continue to have effect after the coming into force of this act as if granted under this act, and B, in the case of a grant for a specified period, shall remain in force for so much of that period as falls after the coming into force of this act. They clearly intended to have saving and transitional periods, Madam Speaker, and provisions, yet they failed to include elections, Madam Speaker, and they are relying on the Interpretation and General Clauses Act. How hard would it have been, Madam Speaker, to add a C there or a D to deal with upcoming elections? The act specifies when the next election is to be held, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, if we continue to go through the act, we will note that there are amendments here that, despite the number of town meetings in the relevant Family Island constituencies, many of the concerns that were raised in those meetings have not been factored into account in this bill itself, Madam Speaker. So there isn't a glowing level of optimism and gratitude from many persons in the local government councils throughout our Family Islands. One in particular, Madam Speaker, a gentleman from Abaco, Jeremy Sweeting, Chief Councillor of Hopetown District Council. He has an article in today's Tribune, and I'm going to adopt sections of his article so that I can put them on record here, Madam Speaker, in this honorable House. He is giving a critique of the history of local government in the Bahamas and where we are today. Now, I'm going to have to put on my spectacles, Madam Speaker, because having made it to my 46th year, my eyes have finally adjusted, Madam Speaker. So while I can see the paper better, unfortunately, I can't quite see you as clearly anymore. They're those types of spectacles. There's pros and cons to age, Madam Speaker. There's pros and cons to age. But in Jeremy Sweeting's letter to the editor today, he gives a breakdown of the history of local government in the Bahamas. He says in March of 1996, landmark legislation was passed under the administration of Hubert Ingram. The Local Government Act became law, and in June 1996, historic local government elections were held to elect committees and councils across the Family Islands. Madam Speaker, I think that deserves very worthy recognition. I've highlighted already, but it's actually created the ministry that the good member for Central and South Eleuthera has stood up here today to represent. It's actually how he cut his teeth, Madam Speaker, in government in the Bahamas. As he boasted, he began in local government, Madam Speaker. You would think that he would recognize he began under an F&M umbrella, and somehow the current has taken him over to the yellow PLP. Now, Madam Speaker, Mr. Jeremy, Royal Blue, according to the good member. Jeremy Sweeting's article continues, the introduction of local government in 1996 better improved the delivery of services to communities, solidifying the adage that the government best for the people is the government closest to the people. The landmark legislation deepened democracy and gave communities a voice in choosing who would lead their townships. The introduction of local government is among one of the many great legacies of Hubert Ingram. And as a local government practitioner, I thank him for his promise to deliver local governance, and in so doing, his administration greatly improved the lot of local communities. He goes on, in 2015, myself along with the Hopetown District Council agitated to allow for the district councils to collect property taxes, as we felt we could help in collecting taxes in arrears. With the repeal of the 1996 Act, that's what we're doing here today, Madam Speaker, this bill presented by the Honorable Government Administration. With the repeal of the 1996 Act and its amendments, this bill strips councils of our powers as a chief valuation officer under the 2015 Local Government Amendment Act. Another shameful example of taking power from the Family Islands and placing it back in the hands of central government bureaucracy. The present government campaigned under their platform, Blueprint for Change, promising aggressive reforms in local government with 4 points. The first point, the government has failed to deliver on all 4. As to increase in budgets of district councils on an annual basis as promised, we have received 10% increase 1 year in this present government term. We've celebrated, or they've celebrated, being in government for 3 years. 1 of those 3 years, Madam Speaker, did they live up to their word to local district councils. And in the District of Hopetown, Madam Speaker, the budget is severely underfunded. The Blueprint for Change also promised introduction of local government into Providence. And that, Madam Speaker, according to Jeremy Sweeting and myself, I would agree with him, does not look like it'll come to fruition during this next term. Another promise was the promise to further decentralize decision-making and put power in the hands of communities through local government. He describes that as a farce. He goes on to say, the District Council supports protecting our environment, but we must not allow an agency in Nassau to dictate the processing of town planning applications in our districts when we are the eyes and ears on the ground. This is a pure example of decentralization going in the opposite direction, Madam Speaker. It would be more profitable to set flame to this current bill and go back to square one. It gives Family Islands no real autonomy and strips our communities of some of the decision-making freedoms that we presently possess. Another promise, Madam Speaker, the government failed to give councils true revenue-raising powers as was promised. Now, we heard from the Honourable Member for Central and South Eleuthera today. The legislation allows councils to impose fees to maintain public areas. I doubt you would find council eager to impose fees on such amenities that the public has enjoyed at no cost for years. Now, Madam Speaker, on this issue of raising additional revenue and using park cleanup fees, as though that's going to move district councils ahead, Madam Speaker, if you are charging someone to clean up the mess that they left, when you pay the person who is cleaning up that mess, you won't have any additional revenue to further move you forward, Madam Speaker. So we have to be serious about the revenue-raising powers. The revenue-raising powers should have been wider and more vast. And I see the good member for South Abaco about to stand up. Yet he should be taking his time, Madam Speaker, to deal with issues in his own constituency.
Point of order. The chair recognizes the honourable member for South and Central Abaco.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I appreciate it. I just wanted to point out to the general public that this bill is actually bringing some things that aren't quite in line with our current legislation, in line for what Hopetown District is doing, which Jeremy Sweeting is residing over, and charging a fee to go through the public roads in Hopetown. So something like this would actually bring some of those things back in line, and not use foreign-run community organizations to funnel money through. So I just want to let the public know at hand that that all what is said is not true, and what the good member from Central and South of Luther is trying to do is give more financial abilities to the different local governments and give them more power, but with that comes great responsibility. So I hope he understands that. Thank you.
Yeah, point of
The
order.
chair recognizes the honourable member for Marcus City.
Madam Speaker, the local government practitioner, Jeremy Sweeting, is not in the House. If I heard the member for South and Central Abaco correctly, he seemed to suggest that some funds from foreign entities have been funneled through some mechanism that the local government practitioner is presiding over. We wish for him to clarify exactly what he is saying, because it does appear that he is savaging the reputation of the local government practitioner. And if we are incorrect, we would like him. Let me finish the question. Let me finish the question, because you're attacking somebody who's not in here. He should clarify. He should clarify exactly what he means in order for the public to be clear that there is no mis or malfeasance committed by anyone who is not in this House to defend themselves and to put the information correctly on the record.
Thank you, honourable member. The chair recognizes the honourable member for South and Central Abaco.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I withdraw the name Jeremy Sweeting. I implement the name of the good member from St. Anne's, considering that he'll be adopting the document that he's reading from. And what I was saying is that there's a fee imposed for going through the township of Hopetown by a council that is led by the document that the good member from St. Anne's is adopting. Thank you.
Thank you, honourable member. St. Anne's, you may proceed.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. So those were the four areas of promise made by the current government administration that, according to at least one chief counselor in this country, has acknowledged to have not materialized, to have failed, and in his own words, to have been a farce. Now, Madam Speaker, yes, I'm adopting this. I began by saying I was going to adopt this, Madam Speaker.
Which one you adopted the
paper, the article.
Yes.
Yeah. I mean, the paper also has reports. If you want me to, I can
The chair
adopt
recognizes
those.
the honourable member for
Quite a
Freetown.
number of reports.
Madam Speaker, I ask,
Member,
I rise because the member for St. Anne says that he's adopting that. If he adopts the part that says that this bill should be burnt, that is inconsistent with voting in favor of this bill. And so unless he does not adopt that part, he would not be staying correct to the adoption of it. The writer says that we should all vote against this bill, put it in a fire, burn it up, start again. If the other side is going to be adopting the views of that writer, we would expect that they should all vote against this bill. And if they do not vote against this bill, then St. Anne's would have misled the House.
thank you, Honorable Member.
That's very deep, Madam Speaker. You have a member of government side trying to control the member of the opposition side, if not the entire opposition, on how they should vote in the Honourable House of Assembly. Madam Speaker, while the good member for Freetown himself individually is a constituent of St. Anne's, and I'm here representing him in one capacity as representative of St. Anne's, I'm not going to agree with him on this point, Madam Speaker, and I'm not going to be voting against this bill, despite his best recommendations, Madam Speaker.
The chair recognizes the Honorable Member.
Madam
for
Speaker,
Freetown.
he has a recommendation. He's made
Madam Speaker, St. Anne's doesn't seem to have grasped the point that I make. He says he's going to adopt and make that his own. If he adopts and makes his own, the portion of it that says this bill should be burnt and we should start again, he is adopting and saying we should throw this bill in the garbage. That is inconsistent with voting for it. I am not telling him which one he should do, but you can't burn the bill and support the bill both at the same time. That's the simple point that I make, Madam Speaker. He can adopt everything else other than that line if he's going to vote in favor.
Said that from the outset. He said it's important to pay attention.
All right, Madam Speaker. Do you want me to adopt the article now, parts of the article now, or do that at the end?
You can do it now. You indicated on the onset that you.
I'll read the parts. I'll read the parts that I adopt, Madam Speaker, so it's clear.
Thank you, Honorable Member.
Okay. So these are the parts that I adopt, Madam Speaker. I would appreciate it if those that object to the things that I do in this House would pay attention, because I'm doing them again. The introduction of local government in 1996 better improved the delivery of services to communities, solidifying the adage that the government best for the people is the government closest to the people. The landmark legislation deepened democracy and gave communities a voice in choosing who would lead their townships. The introduction of local government is among one of the many great legacies of Hubert Ingram. And as a local government practitioner, I thank him for his leadership and keeping his promise to deliver local governance, and in so doing, his administration greatly improved the lot of local communities. In 2015, myself, along with the Hopetown District Council, agitated to allow for the district councils to collect property taxes, as we felt we could help in collecting taxes in arrears. With the repeal of the 1996 Act and its amendments, the bill strips councils of our powers as the chief valuation officer under the 2015 Local Government Amendment Act. Another shameful example of taking power from the family islands and placing it back in the hands of the central government bureaucracy. The present government campaigned under their platform, Blueprint for Change, promising aggressive reforms in local government with 4 points. The government has failed to deliver on all 4. As to increase the budgets of district councils on an annual basis as promised, we have received a 10% increase 1 year in the present government term. Our budget remains severely underfunded. The promise of introducing local government into Providence does not look like it'll come to fruition during this term. The district council supports protecting our environment, but we must not allow an agency in Nassau to dictate the processing of town planning applications in our districts when we are the eyes and ears on the ground. This is a pure example of decentralization. The promise to further decentralize decision-making and putting power in the hands of communities through local governance is a farce. And finally, the government failed to give the councils true revenue-raising powers as was promised. The legislation allows councils to impose fees to maintain public areas. I doubt you would find councils eager to impose fees on such amenities that the public has enjoyed at no cost for years. True revenue-raising powers would have allowed councils to penalize offenders for various instances. For example, leaving a derelict vehicle in a public place and charging for its removal. Under the proposed bill, councils could also receive a rebate from various taxes. The issue of central government uses a clever language in the bill stating the council receives a rebate, not exceeding 50% of monies so paid. The government could approve a rebate of half or 1%. The language just guarantees the rebate does not go over a particular percentage. Whilst the government put a ceiling on the rebate, I strongly encourage they put a floor and offer a rebate of no less than 10%. Put this measure in place. In conclusion, I feel that the government had an opportunity to make significant impacts in the Family Islands by passing strong legislation giving local governments true autonomy. Whilst the bill is a shell of the 1996 Act and sadly falls short of the marks of greatness, it is found sorely wanting. Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. Those are the parts of that article that I officially adopt.
Thank you, Honourable Member. Thank you, Honourable Member. Order the document be brought up.
Now, Madam Speaker, as I have a few more minutes in my contribution time, I wish to touch on this issue of government rebates. The direction that local government should be taking, I think, is acknowledged and accepted by all members of this House, particularly those that have paid attention to it, Madam Speaker. You have some areas like Hopetown, that include Hopetown, they're operating on budgets. They're operating on budgets of just over $500,000. You have some areas that include Marsh Harbor. There's 3 areas that have a budget of over 1 million, roughly 1.2 million, and that gets divided up into the different sections of the council that is represented. It's entirely not a sufficient amount of money for them to do anything but manage waste collection, deal with some road cleaning projects, and then at the end of the day, the budgets for the most part, which should really be seeing advances and improvements in the standard of living in the Family Island Local District Council communities, is left having to make a decision on, with the money that we have remaining, are we going to pay to replace a few planks on the public dock, or are we going to fill the potholes? In many instances, Madam Speaker, it's not even an option to do both. It's a this or that decision that has to be made. And there's a lot of money that is being spent by this administration. The last administration also spent a lot of money having to deal with Dorian and COVID, the closing of the economy, Madam Speaker. But we can do a lot more for local councils, for Family Island communities, by increasing the amount of money that they're receiving. I think the 10% per year, even though it wasn't met by this administration, should be seen as a bare minimum until it gets up to a point of an amount that is actually what those communities are requesting, a reasonable amount that those communities are requesting. But I don't accept that the reasonable amount is being met right now when the decisions are, do we patch a pothole or do we nail a plank on a dock, Madam Speaker? So we need to pay attention to that. And what are some of the ways that this administration, that past administrations, have looked to allow local government to do that, to raise revenue? We had the comments from Mr. Sweeting that there was at one time an opportunity to collect tax revenue on behalf of the government, and a certain portion of that was to come back to those local communities. That hasn't actually transpired, Madam Speaker. That is something that was seen at the time it was put in place as being a very important step in the right direction. But like the electric slide, Madam Speaker, central government seems to be walking back on that. So let's make sure that if we are allowing communities to collect revenue, that we're not limiting them to being able to pay for the person that collects the trash on a public park. Let's look for real revenue streams, Madam Speaker. In Jeremy's district alone, in his Hopetown community, realtors on their VAT invoices, every time they sold the property this year, have contributed VAT in excess of $600,000 to the public treasury. Yet their budget, Madam Speaker, is just over $500,000. And if you think about it, VAT on real estate commissions is 10% of roughly 6% of the actual property sales price. And on majority of those property sales prices at 10%, Madam Speaker, there would have been hundreds of thousands, millions more likely going into the public treasury. So if we can empower our local councils, our local government bodies more, let's start looking to give them their fair share. We all know about this expression, their fair share, in the House. When we debated the minimum domestic top-up tax last time we were here 2 weeks ago, we said those big corporations generating 750 euro, over 800 million euro US, should be paying their fair share. Well, what about our family island communities properly receiving their fair share from the consolidated fund up to what is seen as a necessary maximum cap that'll allow them to do more, Madam Speaker? You also have an instance where local government is seeing money taken out of their account. It's being put on the account. In some instances, it's being designated for contracts, Madam Speaker, and the money is taken out of the account. Then there's a whole process about the full amount wasn't the amount that was fully taken out wasn't the correct amount.
The honourable member for Central and South East.
I just want to, member for St. Anne's, to clarify. You're saying that the Department of Local Government takes funding out of money that we've already allocated to councils? That's what you're saying? That we've given them, that we remove it?
Madam Speaker, I was just waiting for him to sit down. Yes, sorry? Only one member on their feet at a time. That's House rules. That's House rules. So, Madam Speaker, it's my understanding that the Central Council that deals with the Marsh Harbor District, Madam Speaker, had an amount of $70,000 in their account, and there was an additional amount that had accrued of roughly $200,000. It's my understanding that that amount of money was removed. I'll sit down so the good member for Central and South of Luther can deny that.
Hold on. Well, is your understanding, honourable member? So do we have the facts about that?
Do we have the facts about that? You mean, do I have the government bank account with me?
No, I don't say you must have the government bank account.
We have the government minister here. He can deny it, Madam Speaker.
Okay.
This is the minister. You've made a career of it, Foxhill, arguing the negative. Madam Speaker, I'll sit for a moment so he can check in with his department. No?
The chair recognizes the honourable member for Central and South East.
It's amazing the member for St. Anne's comes in, makes allegations, speculates all the time. He just throws something, hopes it sticks. I mean, I don't know what it's amazing. What is he saying? The member for St. Anne's, if he has proof that the Department of Local Government removes funding that we've allocated to a council, he at least ought to bring it. But you just can't say what you feel like in this place. You know, it's crazy.
We have to be very careful the way we do business in this place. Because when you are indicating that amount of money, you're calling someone a thief. You got to be careful. So unless we have the facts, I want that to be stricken from the record. And I would also like the fact that I would like to remove Mr. Jeremy Sweeting's name, who is an innocent person in all of this, who indicated that through his article. Listen, members, we have to remember our rules. And if you wanted to speak to that, remember Rule 33 on page 26. You can adopt, but please, members, let's not call innocent persons' names in this house. We are incorrect when we do that, because then I am going to have to indicate to you Rule 24. That speaks to any member who desires to refer in debate in the House or in any committee to the character or conduct, and this man has his character being assassinated by some of you because you're taking what he says and you're misconstruing it, and then somebody else is saying something else against it. So we cannot do that, and I will not allow that to a private citizen of this Commonwealth of the Bahamas to be taken down like that. So I'm asking the Hansard to remove what both St. Anne's and the member of South and Central Eleuthera said, indicating while using the name of Jeremy Sweeting. Abaco, sorry. So don't do that. So don't do that. Everybody look alike. You know? So don't do that. So don't do that. Don't bring these people here and put their name on the public record of this place and then cause a disgrace for them and misconstruing what they're saying. The chair recognizes the honorable member for Freetown.
Madam Speaker, what is particularly troubling, and I think St. Anne's needs to specify, if he is suggesting that the central government can put money in a bank account, that's the council's bank account that the central government does not have signing mandates on, and the bank will permit the central government to withdraw money from an account that they do not have the mandate on, that actually is an imputation on the bank.
Exactly.
And so if that's what he means, he should say it. He should name the bank.
And then one gets
And,
sassy.
well, he should name the
I'm trying
bank
to
because
protect
then
him.
it would be very simple
You
to
wanna get
check
sassy
it,
with me?
if that is what he means.
If you say
because
that
what-
against the bank, they can sue him, you know. Gotta be careful.
Because, Madam Speaker, what is very troubling is there's a suggestion.
On to speak, making that insinuation, you're sitting there letting him run on with it.
No, St. Anne's,
Sit down and stop impugnating the reputation of the banks of the Bahamas.
Okay, one speaker.
Madam Speaker, that is what I got from what he said. If that is not what he means, he can clarify it.
Thank you, honorable member.
He can clarify it.
Run on.
Honorable member, you may now proceed.
Have my position as what I say, not what Monroe or Freetown or the Minister of National Security has to say. This is ridiculous, Madam Speaker, but I don't mind. I don't mind, Madam Speaker.
All you're doing is addressing what Madam Speaker said, you know. You're answering over here. I am saying that when you make suggestions like that, remember now, the bank account is managed in government.
This is
governed
nothing that
by
St. Anne
people,
said.
By
This
people.
is Madam Speaker
You're
in
saying the
Freetown.
amount is gone. So if we're going to say that, bring the facts. Let's lay it on the table so that it becomes public knowledge. So I can say my protection then covers you. I said he brought the facts. But if you do not bring the facts, St. Anne's, you open the door for many cans of worms, and then it causes a disruption, not for this place, you know, for you. So I'm just doing it as your protector. Understand protection when it's given. You may proceed, honorable member for St. Anne's.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. So as we go through this act, Madam Speaker, I was speaking to the matter of funding, and I'll come now to the issue of rebates, Madam Speaker. The money that's being collected in Hopetown was used in this example. Other communities are raising their own money. By Section 81 and 83 of the Act, Madam Speaker, it deals with rebates. Now, a concern of local government, Madam Speaker, is that while there is a ceiling placed on the maximum amount of a rebate that could be received, there is no floor, Madam Speaker, so there is no minimum amount. So while you hold out a carrot of a rebate, for instance, fees and taxes in the town area of 10% under Section 81, Madam Speaker, there is, oh, actually of 100%. So the rebate will not exceed 100% on matters relating to fees and taxes collected in the town area, paid in the Consolidated Fund for building regulations, for firearms, for port authorities, peerage, wharfage payable in respect to the use or occupation of a public abutment, for boat registration, for water skiing and motorboat control, for business license. So while local council can receive up to 100% by way of rebate of those fees collected, it doesn't say but at minimum 50 or but at minimum 75. So you can go up to 100, not beyond it, but you could still get a 0.5% in rebate, Madam Speaker. Recommendation is that there needs to be a floor, a minimum that should be payable, and this carrot of 100% shouldn't be left dangling without a dose of reality, Madam Speaker. When we look at 83 of the Act, it deals with funds and resources of council. 83.2, notwithstanding the provisions of any written law where fees or taxes collected in the district are paid in the Consolidated Fund pursuant to the provisions of the Road Traffic, Civil Aviation, Hotels Act, Real Property Tax Act. In the case of monies paid under the Acts in Section 2, a rebate not exceeding 100% of the monies, and in the case of monies paid under the Act mentioned in subsection 2A, C, and D, a rebate not exceeding 50% of the monies so paid. This is another situation, Madam Speaker, where there needs to be, again, a floor so that government can't turn around after this act is passed and end up giving 1% or 10%. These ceilings, Madam Speaker, really should be the actual amount that these local district councils receive. Madam Speaker, I'll continue on from 81 to have a look at Section 57. 57 deals with the absence, Madam Speaker, of council members from council, and their absence can result in their office being deemed vacated. Under the amendment in 2014, the number of absences that were permitted were 6 consecutive absences. This bill brings it to 3 consecutive absences. Now, the original bill in 1996 began with 3 consecutive absences. So this groundbreaking bill actually is taking this provision, as well as several others, back to the 1996 position. Why would anybody wish to extend the number of absences from 3 to 6 back in 2014 is beyond me. There may have been some exceptions. It's always difficult at times, especially in individual communities, to find enough persons to volunteer their time to be in attendance. There are family priorities. But I think that as local government grows, it should remain at 3, but it shouldn't even be consecutive, because I can miss 3 meetings, attend 1, and I'm clear, and then I can start again 3 consecutive meetings. So say there was 12 consecutive meetings in the year. 3 times 4 is 12. I could attend 4 and miss 8 meetings and still remain on council in local government. If you're serious about local government and these local districts are asking the Consolidated Fund and central government to send more money back to them, and we've also seen a very nominal increase in monthly stipends, then we should be serious in terms of attendance. If you miss 3 concurrent meetings in any year, that will leave your seat vacated. Okay, Madam Speaker? And what concurrent means is, instead of it being lined up like executives, this is how I remember it, 1, 2, 3, line them up one after another. Concurrent means in total. So if persons miss 3 meetings, Madam Speaker, then they should be seen as vacating their seat. Now, Madam Speaker, there doesn't appear to be any discretion in this. So I guess if somebody does have a justifiable excuse for missing 3 consecutive, and as I'm recommending 3 concurrent, there isn't any discretion left to the council body to not cause the seat to be vacated. Going from Section 57, Madam Speaker, I had a note on Section 60. And Section 60, Madam Speaker, this is an important one. This deals with procurement, and what we are seeing by this proposed bill is that by Section 60, subsection 7, this deals with the contracts. So of the budget that council will have, this deals with the contracts that they can award. It's meant to be an autonomous body, but if your contract is between $5,000 and $25,000, Madam Speaker, Central Council isn't the one giving approval. Approval is left to the Department of Local Government to make a decision on. So Section 80, subsection 7A reads, where the estimated value of a procurement contract is between $5,000 and $25,000, A council or town committee shall submit the requisite tender documents to the Department of Local Government for approval and publishing. This is not seen, Madam Speaker, to build the autonomy of local government. This is actually seen as a ludicrous provision because it's going to just cause further delays in the entire process. I mean, what contracts, Madam Speaker, that local government is issuing are going to be under $5,000? It's probably going to be, as Central and South Eleuthera just interjected, those waste cleaning contracts around use of public parks and the like. I know you can break down $500,000 into 4,999 increments, Madam Speaker, to avoid this, and maybe that's how things get done, but that's not how things should be done. The approval authority and the autonomy, the power should be left for local government to make the decisions on the business that they know their communities actually need. As was said before, they are the ones with the ears and eyes on the ground in their community, Madam Speaker. So as has been said, the honorable opposition intends to support this bill, Madam Speaker, and as the member for St. Anne's, I also support this bill. It's been an interesting contribution, Madam Speaker. I hope some of the points actually made it across into the ears of our government draftsmen. I don't know if they're going to propose any amendments before we go to the third reading of this bill. And I'm thankful that we have a bill on general clauses because the draftsmen and this government, in their eagerness and excitement to act the fool, Madam Speaker, could have put in some saving provisions. Could have put in some saving provisions.
Unparliamentary.
I'm wrapping up, Madam Speaker, and I'm getting
disregard
jests
the
from
statement Akaful by the member
members
for
on the
St. Anne's. Thank you,
government
Honorable.
side now.
The chair recognizes the honorable member.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker.
Thank you.
We don't say that in here.